I'm super excited to be here and share with you this story. This story is called Friends with Pride. Now there was a boy whose closest friend was called Pride. The boy loved nothing more than to please his friend, who would pat him on his back all the time. However, Pride was a very, very jealous friend. So if anyone came close to befriending this boy, Pride would come along and point out all shaming things about that person. Pride would puff up the boy's chest so that the boy would feel like getting one over them. He would then walk away from that opportunity to make a friend, to win a friend. He actually felt good about it at that moment as Pride would pat him on his back. With his head held high, he smiled to himself. However, it wasn't long before he was sitting all alone and lonely with no one for company. Because Pride wasn't a real friend, he wasn't his real friend. He was rather a miserable companion with evil intent. So Pride would often make him offended in everybody for some reason or another. They were all wrong and he was right. And Pride would back him up. And indeed, on the outside, Pride was handsome. He was always dressed cool. However, beneath his mask and costume, he was really dull and drudgery and appeared as depression. This is when it would try and steal his life, not not before it had taken away his remaining joy. Depression is ugly, and it had this long mouth it literally uses to suck up one's life till they can see nothing good. The boy had to decide to give up pride or to give up life. This is a deep story, but I wanted to tie this and talk more on this. Now, in the Bible, there's something Jesus spoke about, which was often referred to as the royal law. I'm gonna tell it in this story. I'm sure you've probably heard of this story called the Good Samaritan that Jesus shared, and it happened. It's written in the Gospel of Luke chapter 10. It says, on one occasion, an expert in the law stood up to test Jesus, and he asked, "What must I do to inherit eternal life?" This is the abundant life, endless life that God offers. What is written in the law? He replied. How do you read it? Jesus said. He answered, "Love the Lord your God with all your heart, and with all your soul, and with all your strength, and with all your mind, and love your neighbor as yourself." "You have answered correctly," Jesus replied. "Do this and you will live." And just touching on this, he said, "Do this and you will live." I wanted to say this because they are principles to live a happy life. And sometimes we don't like the laws that God gives, but God gives them for our good, because when we choose our own pride, our selfishness, we're often left miserable for it, and we don't understand why we're in this cycle, and we fall into depression. So Jesus shows the way to freedom in life is by following his principles. So Jesus said, when we apply his sayings in our lives, it's like building on a rock. So when the storms of life come and the winds blow, your house is going to stand firm. When we listen to his words and we apply them to our lives, if we do not, it's like a man who built his house on the sand, and when the storms of life came and the winds blew, this house falls flat. So the teachings of Jesus are foundational to our lives, and they lead to liberty and freedom and happiness. And it answers a lot of questions, because life is a journey, and if you want to build a house, the principles you follow so that your house can stand. So yes, Jesus continues to share the story of the Good Samaritan, because this lawyer who came to ask Jesus wanted to justify himself, and he thought, I should love only the person who looked like me, who believed the same thing as me. And Jesus gave this story of a man who was going down to Jerusalem, from Jerusalem to Jericho, and he fell in the hands of robbers who stripped him and beat him up, and they went off leaving him half dead. Now, by chance, a priest was going down that road, but when he saw the injured man, he passed on the other side. So too a Levite, when he came up to the place and saw him, passed on the other side. But a Samaritan who was traveling came to where the injured man was, and when he saw him, he felt compassion for him. He went to him, bandaged his wounds, pouring oil and wine on them. Then he put him on his own animal and brought him to the inn and took care of him. The next day, he took out 2 silver coins and gave them to the innkeeper, saying, take care of him, and whatever else you spend, I will repay you when I come back this way. And then Jesus proceeded to ask, which of these 3 do you think became a neighbor to the man who fell in the hands of the robbers? The expert in religious law, that's the lawyer, said, the one who showed mercy to him. So Jesus said to him, go and do the same. You know, when I read this story, Jesus really points it out, because the first man was a priest, and so it's not about, these principles apply to everyone the same. See, God is not He's not a respecter of persons. He doesn't show favoritism. You know, if you apply these lives, if you apply these principles in your life, you find, you're gonna find life. Say, do this and you find life. You will live. So, priest or not, and it's not priority to being a Jew. It's not to a particular race or person, but every human alike. So the person who ended up helping him was not a Levite. That's from the 12 tribes of Israel. But he was a foreigner. He was a Samaritan. And usually that day the Jewish people looked down on Samaritans because they were half caste, but Jesus shows that your neighbor is the person in front of you. Is the person in front of you, and we ought to show kindness to the person we find in need. Because when you're in trouble, you don't know who's going to help you. It's not necessarily the person who looks like you, believes the same things as you. So there's really freedom and life we find in Jesus' sayings. I hope you're blessed. Thank you.